But, I remember I had one of my best programmers and he wanted to become a leader. But back then, this was many years ago, about 20 years ago, I didn't know how to make him a leader, or I didn't even know whether he could be a leader. So I gave him a leadership position. 2 years later, half my developers that reported to him quit. And later on, I came to realize that you need to develop leadership skills if you want to be a leader. And you almost need to let go a little bit of your technical skills. It's very different from doing that, being a good leader of yourself, to being a good leader of other people, and you're responsible for their work. So that if you don't have the skill sets, you're going to burn and crash. It was my fault that this person failed. Welcome to your show, Leaders in Technology. I am your host, David Mancella. I have created this podcast to acknowledge leaders in technology that is changing the world for a better place in the organizations they are working for, and also to figure out how they got there to begin with. Being a leader in technology these days is not easy. Sometimes you have to take the technology route and become a computer scientist, and then somehow take the leadership route and become an exceptional leader. Or sometimes you're a business, your major is in business, and thankfully, eventually you get into leadership, and then you get into leadership in technology, and both routes are valid, and both routes are very difficult. So my goal is to inspire people that want to become a leader in technology, because that's the future of the world, that's the future of humanity, and how to do it in a way that we're actually blessing everybody else. Because technology is not just about the technology itself. Technology is for people, to make people's life better, to create more abundance in the world. So today we have an exceptional leader in technology, a CTO for many startups, a great person, Mario Netto. Welcome to the show.
David, so glad to be here.
Fantastic. Mario, can you please tell me, where do you live?
So I'm right now in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. You've been there for a while, right?
Yeah, I came here in 1999 from India, and I've been here ever since.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. Atlanta is one of my favorite cities. I have family living there, and
nice.
At some point we considered moving to Atlanta, but we decided to stay in Toronto. All right, let's go back to your life. This podcast is about you and how you got to where you are. How did you start in technology? Did you go to university for computer science, or what was your path?
Yeah, so I was initially going to go into mechanical engineering. And so I started doing mechanical engineering back in India, and my dad worked for American Express and kind of like the catering side, and he would come and tell me about this work environment, where they all had computers. And this was a time when I remember in my high school, a class of 30, we had 2 computers, and so never really got time to work on it. It was very expensive. But then when he would explain, they work in this environment with music playing, everybody had computers. And so one day I was in the area, so I decided to stop by and visit my dad. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like a whole different world. And I loved writing programs and such. So I went and joined a computer institute to learn programming and just fell in love with it. And to this day, I'm a hands-on CTO. I still write programs, I design applications, and I was fortunate to land in a field that I've just enjoyed over the last few decades.
That's beautiful. And actually, when you are a co-founder of a startup, or you have enough shares and you have the blessing to become a CTO, you get to choose, right? You can hire a vice president of technology that reports to you, that takes care of the rest, right? Yeah. Which, by the way, another route, isn't it? For me, my mentors told me I had to stop writing code when I was in the 3rd year of my business, because he said, you have to become a full-time leader or you will not go through this. That's another realm. And I love this podcast because I have seen so many people. The other day I interviewed a senior vice president for a large hospital, and his life story was completely different how he got there, from the business world. He actually got into technology, and he realized how important leadership inside technology is.
Yeah, and that is a very valid point. I mean, as much as I enjoy the technology side and I like to roll up my sleeves and write code, when you get part of a bigger team, it's that important aspect of learning to let go, learning to then mentor other people, to kind of help them grow and get up to speed. So then you can kind of move up to that next level of having the bigger view of what's happening in an organization. Because, when you're in there coding, it's such a focused task that you have to tune yourself out of everything else. And so that's a very valid point. It's like you need to get to that point where you need to learn to mentor and coach others so that you can go do something else. Where you're not sitting there coding 24/7.
Yeah, when you have new kids coming out of the school, maybe with 4 times as much capacity as you used to have, right?
And then you can learn to set the direction, right, for where the enterprise goes.
What happened after computer science school in India? Did you take a job right away, or how did you start your professional career?
Yeah, so I finished my computer studies there, and part of that program was a 1-year internship. And I was fortunate to go to Malaysia for about 9 months.
Malaysia?
Yeah, I was in Kuala Lumpur, just an amazing city. Worked there and really continued to enjoy what I did. And then I came back to India after the internship, and there was a company out of Atlanta that was hiring from India, and so they hired me, and that's how I ended up coming to Atlanta.
So when you took that after the internship, you actually went into Atlanta right away, or you were working remotely first?
No, so after the internship, I came back to India. I worked in India for a while, and then I started to have this interest of going outside of India. I was looking at Australia, I was looking at Canada, and then this opportunity came to come to the United States. So I was like, well, let me take this opportunity, and the rest is history.
That is amazing. Incredible how one career choice will change your life forever, right? Yeah. That's incredible. And blessings to your dad, because he actually opened your eyes by showing you how it was like in his environment, right?
Oh yeah, and my dad worked in a factory, and so even when I wanted to go into mechanical, my big thought was I was going to go into an industry and work. And I know he worked very hard, and one big thing he was like, there's other stuff. He was like, I don't want you going into a factory. It's very hard work. But a lot of the people around where I live worked in factories. So in my mind, that's all I knew. And so when he switched jobs for health reasons, and he was working in this American Express office in the city, and he explained this different environment, I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. I want to go check it out. So it was truly, it was an amazing man, and he kind of definitely opened that window and the door, for me to, experience this life and career. It's something I still enjoy.
It's beautiful. And for those that are watching, that's leadership. Leadership is to inspire people to have a better life through their own experience. So your dad became a leader right there that inspired you to have a career choice that will be very, very sustaining and blissful and full of opportunities. I had the same privilege. When I was back in high school, back in my hometown in the 80s, my uncle was the CTO for one of the largest banks. And he knew I was struggling with the typewriting, because back then you needed to learn how to type. he says, come to my office, I'll show you a different world. And I went to his office. He has, many people in his floor. The whole floor was IT, and he was the boss, and everybody had computer terminals. They were on a mainframe, obviously, in the 80s. And he showed me how to do a letter on a text editor, text editor. And he was, copying and pasting with commands on the keyboard, and then he hit the print button, I think it was F2 or something, and all along this letter comes out of the printer, and I'm like,
yeah,
wow. But not only that, what also got me hooked was, to your point, was the environment. I actually forgot that, but the environment, I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
People had music. They were dressed back then. They were dressed with ties and suits, even though they were programmers, right? And network engineers. Everybody had, especially a bank.
Yeah.
And they were adjusting the computer, and it looked like it was a beautiful environment to be at.
Yes.
And that inspired me to follow computer science, just like you. Incredible.
Yeah.
What was the first job that you had in Atlanta?
So I came here in '99, and so it was. I came in and I was doing web application development. So Microsoft came up with ASP right then, and so I'm writing web applications. So I did a couple of projects. So there's, I don't know if they have it in Canada, Honey Baked Ham is a company.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had an office right across the street. So I wrote a little application for them. There was a paint company that I did some work for them, Nobel. So yeah, it was like a lot of little projects, but also I kind of started to run like the IT infrastructure in the office. So maintaining the network, making sure, at that time Microsoft Exchange was up and running. So kind of, it was programming as well as learning infrastructure, learning how networks are set up. So it was kind of, I tell folks, it's like you treat everything like a learning experience, and you kind of be open to learning new things, because you never know, like down the road, those things come in handy, when you're in a situation. So yeah, it was, just been there. And then after that, I worked at that company for about a year and a half, 2. And then I got to go work at a startup back in 2000. Got to work on some cutting-edge technology at the time. Microsoft came out with SQL Server, Commerce Server, Site Server, BizTalk Server. Got to work on all of that. And then just kind of kept moving up, from developer, senior developer, and then manager.
What was your first role as a leader, like your first management role? How did you landed that? Did you like it? And how did you actually start, doing that? I tell you that because in my own company, so I run a software company. I'm being blessed, that you guys were my clients at some point, and I've been blessed with running a large software development team that, creates incredible applications for other companies or help create other applications for other businesses. But, I remember I had one of my best programmers, and he wanted to become a leader. But back then, this was many years ago, about 20 years ago, I didn't know how to make him a leader, or I didn't even know whether he could be a leader. So I gave him a leadership position. 2 years later, half my developers that reported to him quit. And he was not happy. And later on, I came to realize that you need to develop leadership skills if you want to be a leader. And you almost need to let go a little bit of your technical skills, because when you are an exceptional technical person, it's a one-person job, and you're responsible for your job, and then your project manager or your leader is responsible for making sure everything works together in the system. But you really, as long as you deliver, you're fine. It's very different from doing that, being a good leader of yourself, to being a good leader of other people, and you're responsible for their work. So that if you don't have the skill sets, you're going to burn and crash. It was my fault that this person failed, because I never thought about sending him to a leadership course and getting him onto a leadership mastermind for technology people. So what happened with that is that I myself enrolled into a leadership mastermind for technology people, because that's when I realized that I wasn't a leader either. I was just a glorified programmer running a business.
Yeah.
You see? And the funny part is that I had very high-end leadership roles in multinationals, managing, a lot of people. But I still didn't get, once I got to a smaller environment where I didn't have too many safety rails, once I was responsible for the whole thing and for providing payroll for the people, then I realized that I needed more leadership skills. So it took me a whole year to learn.
Yeah.
And it was just the beginning.
Yeah. No, it is. When you get into that role, and for me, I was, and I tell people, and I tell my kids this too. I said, you're going to go through life, you're going to meet different people, and you're going to learn how to do things right and how not to do certain things. So over my career, I've had managers and leaders where some very toxic, some very encouraging. So I've been very fortunate to have a lot of managers who are very encouraging, who are very supportive, and kind of, very constructive feedback to kind of help me grow. So it was very good to have wonderful people like that too. So when I started to have, like a team lead position to kind of help, kind of guide. Now, I'm not perfect. I've made my share of mistakes too. Where people are like, hey, you were micromanaging me in this particular project or things like that. So kind of, again, being that technical person, it's like you're stuck in that technical world. You need to learn to get out, and you need to learn to kind of let go and trust people, and in a constructive way, kind of guide them so that they can be a better developer or a better team individual or team member. But it's one of those things. It's like you go through those experiences that kind of helps you be a better person, be a better manager. And so as you go up the chain, you kind of have those experiences and memories to do right for your people. And at the end of the day, it's your success, their success. We've all been there in the trenches, with getting things done. And it's always nice to have that acknowledgement of like, hey, you did an awesome job, or congratulations on finishing this, and having that pat on the back. Kind of people. I tell people like you need to get up in the morning and be excited to go in, do your job. And I tell my kids this too. It's like whatever you pick, you want them to love. You need to love what you're doing. And so I think that also comes in handy in work environment, where people want to come and work on your team or work in your company.
And it's so true. You have said so many profound things that are just pure wisdom. So for the audience, number one, find good mentors, right? If you have a right mentor, you're going to not even do what they can do, but you're going to do more. If you got the wrong mentor, you run the risk of learning the things that you need to learn in a wrong way.
Yes.
And for good mentors, like I've been blessed, back in 2002, 2003, where I came down to like senior role in leadership. Back then you didn't travel a lot. Like for me, like I was in a building with 2,000 people. Everybody was there, and we had other offices, but the internet was too slow, and everybody got like run in silos. But then I jumped jobs, I moved up the corporate ladder, I got a very senior leadership role, but this company had presence across the country. And to give you an idea how wide Canada is, if you want to go from Toronto to Vancouver, is longer than going from Toronto to Guatemala. And Guatemala is past Mexico. That's how big Canada is. So this company had offices all over the country. And my development team were all over the country. It was a large laboratory, and we were supporting all the labs in all the districts and all the provinces. I didn't know how to travel.
Oh,
Think about that. So my boss, incredible leader, right? I had one boss, like I was close to the top. So I just reported to the top in the company, right? It was like a 2,000 people organization, and he said, you're gonna have to travel with this, like at least once every 2 weeks, because you need to go to the offices and see your developers, make sure everybody's doing right, and see your infrastructure people and all that. And I remember the first time that I came to the airport, it was a 2-hour flight to Montreal. I brought a suitcase like I was going to Disney for 2 weeks. And when my boss saw me, he started laughing. He had a duffel bag like this big, just to carry on. And he started laughing. He's like, what are you doing? We're going there for 2 days. So I had to learn how to travel, but my boss taught me all that, like leadership skills. Like from his experience, he was a senior leader in technology for 30 years, right? In fact, my job was to learn everything he had, because he was going to give me his job was going to be mine. I was going to be at the senior level of everything, right? And he trained me for 3 years. It was one of the most beautiful experiences. And he was a person that had a big heart.
Yeah.
He cared about his people, but he also cared about the CEO. He also cared about making profits, because he knew that without profits, we wouldn't be able to feed all these thousands of people that we had in the company.
True.
No, I learned so much from him, and we owe it to those people. That's why I made this podcast. So for the people that may not have the right mentor right now, they can actually listen to this podcast and get all these skills, like you said. Get the right mentors. Number one, right? Number two, be happy.
Yes.
Choose to be happy in your job.
Yeah.
Right? Come with a smile in the morning. Get excited in the morning. If you're not excited to go to work that morning, you're probably in the wrong job.
Yeah.
And you have the blessing that you live in North America. The richest region in the world is North America. Yeah, and if you're in technology, no excuse. If you're good in technology, you have options.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, our waking hour is maybe 12 hours, maybe 14 hours of awakened time.
Yeah.
You're spending most of that time at the office.
Yeah.
And if you're not fulfilled, you're not happy with what you're doing, you're wasting your time, and you're wasting the company's time.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that doesn't mean it's not gonna be hard. You also have to be strong and courageous. Actually, I got that from the Old Testament. You have to be strong and courageous, but know that God will help you go through the desert.
Yeah.
But you can still choose to be happy and provide. One of the reasons why I grew so fast in my career is because I was always trying to see, what can I do? What can I do to make this company better? What can I do to serve my people better? I always consider the people that was using my services or my department services as my clients. I consider them as my internal clients. Don't ask me why. That's the mentality that I always had.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I always went the extra mile. But because I was thankful that I had a job and I was happy, I made the choice to be happy in the job that I had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That all came from you, brother. Let's talk about transition time. I know in our career, sometimes we are let go because of recessions, or maybe we quit because we need to move up in our careers. Where has been a time in your life where you had to switch jobs, and how did you go through that? And how do you land in the other side of the river?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting. So when I came here to the US, when you come to the US, you have to be on a visa. I was on a visa. I was working at the startup. So this was, right at 99, 2000. That dot-com bubble starting to pop. And so when the startup opportunity came, I was like, in my mind, it was very much a strategic gamble right there, because they were working on all this latest technology at the time. And so I wanted to get my hands on that, because in the industry, you have to start to differentiate yourself. Where, how do you build the skills, not just for yourself, but, for the next role that you go into, the next company that you go into. And so I went to the startup, worked on all of this new technology, and, unfortunately, that startup, went under. And so I was laid off. And I still remember, everybody walked out, and I went to the CEO and I said, well, I need you to keep the company around because my visa is tied to your company.
Oh, so otherwise you had to go back to India.
Yeah, otherwise I have to go back. And so they gave me the key to the company. And so I used to come into the office, and there was nobody. So I would come in, I kept searching for jobs. But since I had acquired those skills, I applied to multiple jobs. And so, one of the Fortune 100 companies in the Atlanta area, within, I think like 2-3 weeks, I got a call, and they were like, hey, we're looking for someone with these skills, and you've got all the skills we're looking for. And so I went and interviewed with them, and I told them, I was like, I need sponsorship, and they were like, yeah, sure, we'll get you the sponsorship. So I got that job, and then I called my old job, and I said, hey, here's the key, I'm good.
Wow. Talk about number one, asking your old boss, your CEO, to keep the business running. That must have cost him something, because he has such a nice heart, right? Number two, being bold enough to ask, right?
Yeah.
Ask, right? And you shall receive. Right?
It's truly a matter of, you either stay or you get on the plane and go back.
And now being bold enough to look for a job, knowing that they needed to sponsor you, that's an extra step that most, especially Fortune 500 companies, are not willing to make. Maybe now it's different, but back in 2000, that was unheard of. It was very hard.
Yeah, it was very hard. And again, I was fortunate and blessed, to be in that situation of having, these skills, and then finding a company that was looking for that skill, and, and then being able to, find that match and get that job. So yeah, it was nerve-wracking, coming out of that situation, but it's hard. And I tell people, and even from my experiences, like you have to have that positive, attitude. Like when you're going in for interviews, give it your best shot. Come in with all the skills that you have, not just the technical skills, but the soft skills. Coming across as, even you're a good team player. You're eager to understand what the business is looking for, understand what their needs are, not just, I'm looking for a job, give me a job.
Don't make it about you, make it about them, right?
Yeah, it's like, how can my skills complement what you're looking for? And because it's going to be a partnership. And so, yeah, it was quite an experience, that going through that transition. It was nerve-wracking, but I think there was very much like, I'm going to make it happen. Having that faith, having that, positive attitude, if you will. That was something, again, I would say, learned from my dad. It's like this positive energy, just knowing that, I'm going to give my best shot. And,
one of the things that a great technology leader has to have in their arsenal is a positive mindset. And that's something that is a choice, especially in tough times. We have the God-given power to choose our thoughts. And you could choose to look at the world in a negative way and act accordingly, or you could choose to look at the world in a positive way and act accordingly. And whoever gets the blessings is not only you, but your team, the people that you're managing. Also, not being naive, being realistic. But in your case, for example, you had so many reasons why to get depressed and to feel like it was over, and to feel like, you need to go back to India and get a job there and start all over again after tasting the freedom of the United States. Yes. One of the most amazing countries in the world. Yeah. But you didn't do that. You chose to be positive. You chose to say, there is a way. I love ancient wisdom. The older I got, now I have, white hair. I have so many people that, I've been blessed that, I'm responsible for their income, but I'm really not. It's God who is actually providing the income through my company. But I decided to learn ancient wisdom because this wisdom comes from thousands of years ago. And I remember just reading in the New Testament, Matthew 7:7. It says something that is profound, and if people apply this to their leadership arsenal, there's nothing but success. And it's simple. What it says is, look and you shall find. Knock and it will be open to you. And ask and it will be given to you. And you did those three things and you didn't even know where you got that wisdom from, but you applied ancient wisdom in this situation. You looked and you found, right?
Yeah.
You looked and they opened the door for you on the job interview. And then you asked for the sponsorship and they gave it to you.
Yeah.
Literally word by word, ancient wisdom. But what do people do? Right? It's impossible. How can they sponsor me? They don't even know me, right?
Yeah.
I'm new in this country. Yeah. You know what? That's like 90% of the population. That's why when you have a true technology leader, you'll quickly realize that they have at least that skill set. They might not know where that the wisdom comes from. It's ancient. It's proven.
I think that is like my mom. I mean, she is such a strong person of faith. Even to this day, it just amazes me when it's very much where she would be like, well, it's gonna happen, and it just happens. And so I think there was also the faith helping me through those times, like, okay, I'm gonna do my part, I'm gonna have faith that it's all gonna work out. There's a plan, and we're just gonna have the faith that it's all gonna work out in the end.
It's beautiful. Springboarding on top of that, can you remember a situation where you were in a big mission critical project working with other people and the project was under, but you found a way to come through and you actually delivered successfully? Can you remember anything like that in your life?
Yeah. So, there's a number of them. I would say the most recent, we were working on, we had a new client come on board on one of our platforms, and they just happened to be much larger than all the other clients that we had. And so all of a sudden, the whole platform's starting to slow down, and it's taking time for them. And so the client was upset about hey, what's going on? Why is it taking so long? What's the issue? And so again, it's one of those okay, this is the issue, understanding what the issue is. And then, kind of digging into all this knowledge that I've accumulated over the years. I was able to pull in a whole different tool that we never used before. And so able to bring that tool in a couple of days, write up, a design that we were going to use and solve the problem for the client, in a couple of days. And so when, going back to this, and especially in this field, to kind of know all the different technologies that are out there. Now, you may not use that all in depth, but just be aware that things are out there. And so in this particular situation, there was a lot of background computation that was happening. But because this client was so complex, we were having to do the computation over and over. So instead, we decided to use a caching server to say, once you've done the computation, just go ahead and cache it. So that, when the client comes back again, they're not going to know. It's going to be super fast.
Instant.
So, yeah, it's one of those situations where, that's one of the reasons I like this field is the challenge. It's okay, now there's this new challenge. Okay, how do I solve it? How do I come up with either a process or a design to kind of help solve it? So, it's fun.
It's learning to think out of the box and relying on your team to come up with innovation and ideas when they are needed.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, right? Again, another leadership skill, right? Just because you don't know how to solve a problem doesn't mean that there is somebody in the world that knows how to solve the problem.
Yes.
I had a similar situation. I was already in my business. We were hired to write a large financial system for, I think there were like 7,000 clients in North America. It was a SaaS product, but it was 2007. So again, internet wasn't what it is now, and we already went SaaS on this. And 7,000 locations, hundreds of thousands of recurrent users. And our product worked fine with the web interface that we built, for a few hundred users. But once we started scaling, everything started to slow down. And then, I pulled my team over with, I remember we had a war room where we just got the best engineers and the best architects. And we actually consulted with our client too. Our client had also their own development team, and we got together and we were like, okay, we need to figure this out. If we could actually get some processing done on the PC or on the Mac, on the client, we could give the servers some breathwork. Just remember that back in 2007, we didn't have the cloud. I mean, the cloud is just a concept of having servers hosted by somebody else, but Amazon wouldn't have anything. I remember we were so revolutionary that we already had servers. I don't remember what was the name of this company. It was one of the first cloud companies with managed services, and they had the servers for us there. So we were thinking, how do we do this? I think it was a 1 or 2 megabit connection back then. There was not, but it was best for today's standard, was very slow. But I remember that I had a friend, listen to this, that was a computer consultant. I think he had a PhD in math, but he became a software engineer too. And this guy loved writing low-level programming. So I said, maybe he knows something.
Yeah.
And I picked up the phone, called him. He came over, we hired him as on a consulting services to help figure it out. To make the long story short, we all brainstormed and we figured out a way to do caching on the client.
Oh.
Just like you were doing caching on a server, we actually started doing caching on the client. And we started doing asynchronous messaging when nobody knew what asynchronous was, when you actually had a nice front interface on the web, but doing data processing on the interface and just sending little bits of processing to the back end. Right? It was beautiful. And he figured it out. Then my team implemented it, and that not only saved the company, it actually made it go to $100 million of net worth in a couple of years after that. And then they got acquired. We helped them get acquired. And I was so smart back then that actually they offered me some shares. When you start working with startups, they offer you shares instead of paying a bill. So I said, okay, I love the founder. So I said, no problem, right? So I think I got 5% at the beginning. My company worked with them for about 3 or 4 years, and then my 5% became 2%, 1%, then so diluted because they were raising millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But when they got sold, brother, it was worth it. I think I did the math. If I would have gotten my invoices paid instead of the shares, I would have gotten like 20th of what I actually got. You see?
Yeah.
But think about innovation. Think about a positive mindset, knowing that this could be solved. I just don't know how to solve it, and my team just didn't know how to solve it. But going to your external network and expanding your view to see there's gonna be somebody who knows how to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
Remember Ajax?
Yes.
This was before Ajax. We created this applet that could be downloaded with JavaScript that would actually run like an Ajax component.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
But look, a bad leader would have said, we have to figure this out, and we know how to do this, and we would have wasted time and money from our client side.
Yeah.
We recognize that we didn't have the answer. That's called humility. And humility is a key for being a good technology leader.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what you have. That's why you're so successful, right? Mario, if you had the chance to go back in time and talk to your 30-year-old self, 29-year-old self, what advice will you give that person?
Yeah, I think, there were times when when the times were tough, there's the slivers of doubt, like, is this going to work out? But I think, to go back and say, like, have faith, stay the course, keep the good faith, keep, giving your best, work hard, and it's, gonna just continue to work out good, and you'll be blessed. There were times that I was like, on the verge of like, oh, maybe this is not gonna work out, but I'm glad I, held fast. But yeah, and I tell people now too, it's like, hang in there, like, just, especially, it's like as you grow older, you look back and you go, and you think about all the experiences. So I tried to tell my kids and even my, people, younger people that I work with, is like, hey, this is what I experienced. So, keep the faith, keep doing a good job. You're going to have tough times. That's what makes the other times more sweeter, and beautiful. It's like, you've been through the trenches, and, now you're blessed with the people you work with, the people you know in your life. That's life. You have your ups and downs, but you keep working hard. Be fortunate and be grateful for what you have. At the end of the day, you wake up, you're alive, you still got your loved ones and friends and good health. Be grateful for that, and other things then start to, they're not so crazy and frustrating as much.
Fantastic, fascinating. Thank you so much for that. What an amazing advice is true, right? When we're younger, right? So for the people that are looking at this and really listening to this, that your aspirations are to become a senior technology leader. That's a key component. Hold the faith and know that it's going to work out. Think outside of the box, right? You don't have all the answers. Look for the answers.
Yeah.
Brother, I thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being such an amazing CTO. One last question before we go on. I think your heart is already open, so you will answer this question really easy. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Will we say that again? If I was to be born?
So let's say there is a billboard, an advertising billboard.
Yeah.
That billboard has access to a lot of people a day because it's in front of a very busy highway. What would you write in that billboard?
Oh my goodness. I would say, have faith, be kind. I think, be a good person, and make a difference, make a positive difference in other people's lives. Bring joy. Again, I'm sure there's a way to summarize all these things. But yeah, I think, just be grateful and, make other people, make a positive difference in their life.
Other people. I think that's the secret of life, not only to being a good leader, but of life. If you follow that, be grateful and make a positive impact on other people, you have it figured out, brother.
Yeah. Because
now you're thinking that it's not only about you. When you start looking inside of you and you start looking in the needs of everybody else, your own needs will get supplied.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
That's in the book of Proverbs. It's incredible. I just read it 2 days ago. When you actually go out of your way and you help other people, you will be helped. It's the law. It's impossible to break the law. What you give is what you receive.
Yeah. 1,000 blessings.
Mario, if people would like to get in touch with you, maybe get some more advice, where can they find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me. I love, my passion is technology, but also working with non-tech founders and leaders, and working with them to help realize their vision and ideas. And for technology people, I'd be glad to share and do what I can.
Fantastic. Mario, God bless you, brother. Thank you so much for being in the show, and I'll see you the next time.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.